Welcome to all C3RF members and friends throughout the nation and indeed around the world, and a special welcome to the folks at Veterans for Freedom as we stream to them on one of their dedicated social media channels. Our C3RF in hot session today should be of great interest to all as it delves into the incredible case of Ottawa Police Service Detective Helen Gruce. Detective Gruce, a 20-year veteran with an impeccable record, was a member of the Sexual Assault and Child Abuse section when she became aware of a cluster of 9 infant deaths in temporal proximity of the COVID vaccine rollout. She noted adverse event data linking the rollout with mother-infant complications. Detective Gruce would launch an investigation and would find herself investigated for discreditable conduct as a result. Nearly 3 years later, she has been found guilty of discreditable conduct by the Ottawa Police Service. What does this mean for her career? What does this mean for the former ironclad police policy of using discretion to investigate investigations given reasonable grounds? Today, we roll in on these questions with an expert wingman in the form of Detective Donald Best, retired, who has been following the Gruce case and all of its proceedings. By way of introduction, his write-up for the Ontario Civil Liberties Association in 2018 in their Civil Liberties Award is instructive. It stated that former Toronto Police Sergeant Detective Best was responsible for investigating Canadian police, lawyers, and politicians involved in organized crime, and was a leading Canadian anti-corruption whistleblower and activist. In his ongoing legal cases and public advocacy, Mr. Best exposed corruption in the Canadian legal profession, including secret orders and investigations by judges, the submission of false evidence in court by lawyers, and the failure of disciplinary bodies such as the Law Society of Ontario and the Canadian Judicial Council to investigate complaints against judges and lawyers. Mr. Best's tireless efforts to create integrity and accountability in the Canadian legal system make him an exemplary leader in the fight for equality before all under the law for all Canadians, including self-represented litigants. Welcome, Donald, to this session of In Hot. It certainly is an honor to have you here with us to discuss what many call the persecution of Detective Helen Gruce. Can we start with how this seasoned professional found herself in this predicament?
Well, Russ, I think she found herself in this predicament because she is a seasoned professional, a professional who values her oath and her duty to investigate without fear or favor wherever she sees potential crime.
Yeah.
And that's what she did. Now she has been found guilty of discreditable conduct for, quote, I have to paraphrase it here, but this is what they said.
Yeah.
Both the prosecutor and the judge, who was called the tribunal officer. He's not a judge. He has no legal training. He's a retired police officer. And what they said was that she failed to ask for permission to investigate a public official.
Yes. This is what gets me.
boy.
This is what gets me, Donald. I had the impression that the police were supposed to be an independent investigative force, that they had the power, the discretionary power, I mean, based on reasonable grounds, to go ahead and investigate anything they bloody well like to investigate. Am I wrong? Is that not the case?
You know, it was the case since 1826. But now you're wrong, Russ, because they've actually in Ontario changed the law. After the Gruce thing got started, they changed the law. And in April 1st, 2024, the new police, basically the Police Services Act has been revised, and there were all sorts of regulations came in, some big changes, some small changes. But one of the biggest changes was in the regulations, which now destroyed 196 years of policing tradition, law, and rules in our society.
Wow.
And that was in, 124 years. That was in 1826.
Mhm.
Sir Robert Peel introduced Peel's principles. Now, he was the one who professionalized policing first in England and the United Kingdom, and then into Canada, and it spread throughout the world. Because before that, the police were just basically a bunch of people who had loyalty to their political masters. Whoever told them to do this or go there, the laws were very loose, and you did what you were told. You obeyed
Yes.
orders.
Now, this new Ontario law, they changed the Police Services Act. Are you saying that they actually put in print that a police officer doesn't have any discretionary powers when it comes to investigating public offices? Is that what it says?
What it says is this, and it's a huge change in almost 200 years. A police officer must now, upon commencing a criminal investigation because he comes across something or she comes across something,
Yes.
must at the first possible opportunity notify a supervisor, and the supervisor must decide to approve it or not approve it, to have it carried on or not carried on.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
now, so, you have a discretion when you see something, you're driving down the road, whatever, you see something, you make an arrest, you have to tell somebody about it. And they make the decision whether or not your investigation will be continued, not you. And you say, well, that almost sounds reasonable, doesn't it? I mean, it sounds reasonable that if I make an arrest or I start an investigation, I should tell someone. Well, that's if you chance across something. But if you want to start an investigation, you must ask permission first. That's
Okay.
in the law.
Okay.
So I can't tell you
Okay.
how many, every day, thousands of police officers across this country self-initiate thousands of investigations. Some of them are into drugs, some of them are into traffic stops, some of them are into crime.
Yeah.
So you're driving down the street, it's 3 a.m., and there's a light on in a barber shop. And because you're curious and a good copper, you go around to the back, and oh, there's people coming in and out of a barber shop at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning. That's very strange. So we buy ourselves a cup of coffee, and we sit there across the alley down the street with our binoculars, and we're uniformed cops. We're nobody special. And lo and behold, we see some gang members coming in, carrying stuff. It's a fence, and we start a criminal investigation. Well, I wouldn't be able to do that. I have to ask permission now before I'm able to do that.
Well, this
Just like in India, there's a business. I think that they're defrauding people. I have to ask my superiors in India. Oh no, that's the mayor's brother. You can't investigate that. And
that's
that's
the
the same
problem.
thing.
Yeah.
That's the same.
Now you're bringing really what we're doing here with it. Well, I'm not an expert in this, but what I see what's happening here is we're actually putting a rule of law up on some sort of a auction basis. That the the premise that everybody is equal under the law and equal to equal access to the law is befuddled here, because now that whole process is being interfered with at perhaps by the political level. I mean, how many politicians are going to if given the opportunity, are going to advise police supervisors to go ahead and authorize that uniformed cop to investigate that politician? I mean, it's just the system. That kind of a system just does not work if you're looking for a rule of law application as per the charter. I mean, it just doesn't work. How do you think police officers feel out in the field? The rank and file, the guys who the women and men who put the uniform on. How are they going to feel about this new way of policing, of oversight before you even start an investigation? How do they feel?
I can tell you how my generation and a
Yeah.
few generations ago feel, but I can also tell you about a little bit of this current generation. And I'm terribly worried, terribly concerned, because we have a generation of police officers right now are basically do what they are told. And we have chiefs of police. When Black Lives Matter were marching all across
Yes.
this country in the United States, but especially across this country during the lockdown, and they were violating the COVID rules, the same rules where the Toronto police went in and trampled customers at Adamson's barbecue, the same
Yes.
rules where they went in and trampled the convoy protesters in Ottawa. Okay. We had chiefs of police in Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, and a few others kneeling with Black Lives Matter protesters who were violating the law, the COVID lockdown laws.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
They
That's
were permitted to do so. The prime minister did so.
yes.
But let some people line up who want to buy some barbecued sandwiches or some
I
people
remember that well.
protesting in the streets.
Yeah.
Okay, and we just trampled them. We just rode over them because they were not politically acceptable. They were not politically allowed to do that. Now, for the last year and a bit, we've had pro-Palestinian protesters
Yes.
blocking streets, holding prayer in the middle of the streets at any time, day or night. They just do it. Nothing happens. So police bring them coffee and donuts in Toronto.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
So their protests are allowed. And when Antifa and the mobs tore down statues and beheaded statues and defaced them, public property, that was allowed.
Mhm. Well, you can see where
So
this is going because I remember during.
Rule of law is long dead.
Yeah,
Russ.
where we had the case in with Freedom Convoy 2022. There was all kinds of a ruckus put up because someone put a Canadian flag on the statue of Terry Fox, and that was sacrilege. That was illegal. That was called out. These are Russian assets. It was just crazy the narrative that was going around that particular instance. And now you see, as you say, we've got statues toppled, and more than that, we've got bullets being fired into Jewish synagogues and schools in Toronto and Montreal. We've got vandalism. We've got outright intimidation and terror in the streets. I mean, the Jewish population. I have some Jewish friends in Toronto. The Jewish population in Toronto is absolutely terrified. They don't know if they can even leave their homes because of the intimidation that's going on. Rule of law dead and deep. But well, back to Bruce. I mean, I want to show you something here. I'm going to cut away and show you. You talk about police of your generation being very dismayed. Let's take a look at what an organization called Police on Guard for Thee has to say. After we take a look at, this is the report, the Ottawa Police Service Discipline Hearing. This is their report. This is by the tribunal chief that you mentioned previously. And just to go down here to, there was a Staff Sergeant Daniluk, which quite frankly seems to be but the only guy that really believes in rule of law in the Ottawa Police Service, but that's just my opinion. We take a look at what Daniluk had to say. You know, it looks like I missed it. So I have to go back up. In his testimony, Staff Sergeant Daniluk stated that there is no limit to police discretion. If a police officer determines that something is written within their discretion and it is in relation to a community safety, then it is pretty powerful. However, leadership and the chain of command should be aware of what the people are doing and their limitations. In all fairness to Helen Cruz, she did believe that she had that authorization. She did believe that she had a green light from no less than the chief of police Slowly at the time and the deputy chief, and then thought she had everything in place to exercise her discretion. And but lo and behold, I guess this is where this comes in, where the tribunal chief ruled that no, you have to have permission, especially when you're investigating public authorities. And the prosecutor in the case even came out point blank and said that the problem with Gruce's her actions was the fact that she should have known that she had to get permission in this case because public agencies were involved. That is that certainly isn't any kind of Pelian police policy. That's absolutely crazy.
No, it's a policy of a police state.
Yeah.
And I've said before that we are in a police state now. People, you know, when I lay out what a police state really is and all the considerations and all the touch points, we are there. We are absolutely there. Now, Detective Bruce, the case against her was pursued for a number of reasons. One of those was to stop her investigation. Let's not take our mind off the babies here.
Oh,
There
yeah.
were two infants in this cluster of 9 who died in their mother's arms. And we heard during testimony from a prosecution witness, no less, an expert in baby deaths, because he's on the Ontario Council that looks after and has oversight on all unexplained infant deaths in Ontario. And that officer testified, don't forget he was a prosecution witness, that in some 500 investigations of unexplained infant deaths, he can't remember one, maybe one of the infants died in their mother's arms. That's because most of the time it's in the crib or whatever. That's just the way these things are.
Yeah.
But in the case of Ottawa, within the span of a few weeks, Detective Bruce noted that 2 babies of the 9 died in their mother's arms. So one officer testifying that it's so rare he can't remember 1 in 500, and Detective Bruce saying we had 2. Now her whole squad knew. Her whole squad had discussed the fact that for some reason, babies were dying at between 2 and 3 times the average annual rate.
Yes.
Yes. And that squad was also ordered by their staff sergeant to not bring up the vaccinations, to not discuss the vaccinations as a cause of death.
Yes.
Now, look, I've investigated way back in the 1980s when I was sergeant detective. Of course, I investigated infant deaths and other deaths.
Yes.
And I can tell you there's a form to be filled out, and it's still here all these years later. And it was part of the testimony in the Gruce trial. And one of the things you ask, and it's so normal in any homicide investigation or sudden death investigation, what medicines were they on? Did they do any illegal drugs? Are they on any prescriptions? Were they given any injections? Did they have any vaccinations?
Yes.
And the other people in the house, vaccinations, prescriptions, everything. So it's a requirement. And one would only reason that it would be
Yes.
that the officer should ask the parents what vaccinations the child has had and what vaccinations they have had, what other medicines were in the house, any
Yes.
addiction problems. I mean, this is what you do.
Now, it's my
And
understanding, Donald, that this particular form, which is, as you say, is a policy prescription in the event of these child deaths, this form has to be filled out, and it includes vaccination status of the family, of the household, of the baby. And this particular form was not filled out by the investigating officer. So Helen, as a seasoned and senior officer in this particular branch, saw this and okay, we got to fill in the gaps here. Let's do our job. Let's fill in the gaps. And she rectified that by phoning the father of I think it was the first baby to die in the mother's arms. And it was for that, because she phoned and talked to the father, and that somehow got leaked out to the press, to the CBC, and then it became a privacy issue and all these other things when it really wasn't. It was just a step in the investigative process. That is where she got hammered and ultimately charged with discreditable conduct when she was simply doing her job.
Yes, I'd like to expand a little on that and provide a little more background and detail. First of all, she called on, I believe it was January 29th, something like that, 2022. She called one of the fathers, and because she wanted to know, was the mother vaccinated? Was the child vaccinated?
Mhm.
Now, this wasn't Detective Gru's case, signed case. That's okay. I've done all sorts of investigations. So have so many other police officers where you come across something, somebody else is investigating something. Sometimes you might talk to the officer, sometimes you might not. There's no property in a witness. There is no property in a witness. Nobody owns a witness. Nobody owns a case. Nobody owns an investigation.
Yes,
Okay.
makes sense. Mhm.
Okay. And we've done that, as I say, for almost 200 years to stop the corruption. Because any police officer is supposed to look into anything. And Sergeant Daniluk, Staff Sergeant Daniluk, by the way, was the sergeant major for the Ottawa Police. He was also the one who literally wrote the book on police ethics. And defense wanted him to testify as an expert witness, but the tribunal officer disallowed all 5 expert witnesses, 3 medical doctors, a lawyer, and Staff Sergeant Daniluk.
Yes, yes,
Okay, disallowed them all, and that's because we can't be having that. We can't have anyone mention the Pfizer documents to
yeah,
show that Detective Bruce was right, because here we are 3 years later, and she was correct. She's
yes.
absolutely correct.
She had
So,
reasonable grounds with all that information at hand. She had more than reasonable grounds to exercise discretion. I want to point out one thing here, that in the report that I just showed, the tribunal chief stated that these witnesses, this was information that was irrelevant. He said all this stuff was irrelevant. It didn't pertain itself to the charge at hand, discreditable conduct. But I noticed he spent an awful lot of time in his report talking about Bruce's personal beliefs about vaccination, about whether she was going to have a vaccine or not, but that was totally relevant. Her personal opinions were totally relevant to the situation and drove his decision to find her guilty. So you
well,
can have your cake, but you
we
can't eat it too.
sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. We've got a bit of a gap here because I'm
Yeah.
on the other side of the world from you. So
Yes.
my my apologies. So there's a couple of issues here. First of all, the decision is an absolute disgrace. It is corrupt. It is against everything that every police officer has practiced for almost 200 years.
Hmm.
But we knew it was coming. A year and a half ago, I wrote an article on my blog, donaldbest.ca, donaldbest.ca. You'll find a whole tab and a whole section, a lot of coverage by myself on the Detective Gruce issue, but a lot of other people too, including famed New York police detective and Medal of Honor winner Frank Serpico,
Yes.
who has been following the case. I mean, Al Pacino played him in a movie. Nobody ever played me in a movie. How about you?
Well, they
No?
should. Not me either, Donald.
All
No.
right. But he said it's unsurprising because corrupt people will do anything up to covering up baby deaths to conceal their own guilt. That's a
This is
paraphrase, but
this is the
that's what he says.
this is the shame of it. Because at the end of the day, I just in let me cut away one more time here
Sure.
to show you this. You're not alone because we have here an organization called Police on Guard for Thee, and they share your viewpoint. They say that the unfortunate truth of this decision is that our policing institutions have been corrupted at the highest levels. The police are supposed to
Absolutely.
operate independent of political pressures, be it external or internal. This is what Detective Gruce is guilty of. So we can see that, yeah, you have a lot of support in the community, and I think it's very, very important what you said there about the fact that we've got in Ottawa we have 9 infant deaths that will go uninvestigated. For these little ones, there will be no justice. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms does not apply. The rule of law does not apply, apparently, because there are more important things at stake here, and that might be the reputation of a vaccine, or the reputation of public agencies, or perhaps it's the reputations of the people that run these agencies. I don't know. I'm just offering up some thoughts here, some alternatives. But these children will not see any justice in Canada.
Well, I believe it's because all those people you mentioned, it's not just their reputation. I believe that some of them now, with the evidence that I've seen, are guilty of criminal negligence causing bodily harm and death.
Wow.
I believe that the evidence is there. The Pfizer documents clearly indicate that Pfizer knew and covered up the fact that, well, for instance, in the early tests, there were no tests on pregnant mothers or infants. There were none. But some women got pregnant. And out of the 32 that they followed up on, 29 babies died in the womb.
That is just incredible. Okay.
2 were born, one born alive, 1 died. So out of, I think it was 31 babies, I might have a number wrong, 32, 31.
Yeah.
That we had all but 2 died in the womb during the pregnancy. And of the 2 that were born, only 1 lived. Now that was known.
Yes.
It was also known that the injections didn't just stay in the muscle mass in the arm, that they passed through the body and went everywhere, including through mother's milk into babies.
Yes.
All this was known, and it's known now, and it was known during Detective Bruce's trial. But that corrupt, disgusting trial officer left that out because it just wasn't relevant.
It wasn't relevant.
Detective Bruce was right. Now, I want to say something else too. And
Yeah.
all of the secretly recorded conversations that I'm about to tell you about, they're all on my website along with the transcripts.
Oh, okay.
In March of 2022, 2 personnel from the Public Health Agency of Canada started to interfere with the internal investigation of Detective Helen Bruce.
Okay.
And I noticed this during one of her court appearances that was televised, at least brought over the internet on, I think it was Zoom or some other program.
Mhm.
And I saw that a certain doctor from Public Health Agency of Canada was monitoring the trial. And I thought, well, that's awfully funny, isn't it?
Okay.
So I looked her up, and indeed, she was one of the ones who were in the group responsible for mandating the vaccine, the COVID
Okay.
vaccine. Well,
And
it's
calling it
starting to
safe and
make
effective. And calling it safe and effective. Yeah.
right. So that's starting to make sense. So I called her up,
Oh,
and I secretly recorded the conversation. Of course,
Oh.
all legal in Canada. We only
Yeah.
have one party permission needed.
okay. Okay.
No beeps necessary. So
Okay.
anyway, I called her up, and she was absolutely flabbergasted that I would know, because she didn't remember. Said Public Health Agency of Canada, Dr. So-and-so. And so she's at work using her official account. Okay. She just kind of forgot. Okay. So fine. Great. So I looked her up before I phoned, and I found she had done all that. She said, "Oh, I can't possibly speak to you without going through the press." I said, "Well, would you like to know what it's about?" And I told her that you were monitoring and she was just shocked. And she said, "All I can tell you is it wasn't for work, it was for personal. Goodbye, click."
Okay.
2 minutes later, I got a call from a lawyer who happens to be her daughter, who happens to be, unfortunately, one of the mothers whose child died, one of the sudden infant deaths.
Yes.
So it turns out
Oh,
she is a breastfeeder, breastfeeds her child, and that she had every one of the vaccinations, every one of them, every one of the shots. And she was so angry at me, and
wow.
very angry at me. And I thought to myself, What a situation that you took the shots, your baby died, and there's no reason that can be found, went all through that,
Yes.
and your own mother is is part of that. And she also worked for did research for the Public Health Agency of Canada, this lawyer. So we have two of them, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like a self-denial thing. And I'm so sorry for them. I really
Yes.
am.
No, I like nothing but sympathy for the mother and the family. It's incredibly
Exactly.
sad.
But at the same time, they did their best to sabotage the defense of Detective Bruce.
Yes.
And I mean, you can talk about what their motivations might have been, but there's a lot of liability now. Anyone who worked in Public Health Agency of Canada, any doctors who injected it, pharmacists, the pharmaceutical companies that sold it, who knew, those who purchased it, who signed that no liability form, and all the rest of that. There are billions and billions at stake here. There's a pile of bodies and dead, injured people.
No wonder the
No
desperate attempts
wonder.
to keep this under wraps, to keep it swept under the carpet. I also see that in the course of the tribunal that Gruce herself was illegally wiretapped in her own home. I mean, here's another breach of trust and law. In trying to, I guess, get information on her that they could use at the trial. I don't know what they're doing, but it just goes on
I,
and on.
I know what they're doing. I spent a year of wiretapping organized crime, and I know that and any copper can tell you this.
Yeah.
It's not just the criminals who are wiretapped. It's their entire family. It's their business people, it's their clients, it's legitimate people or who are around them.
Mhm.
And I mean, because you just hear everything. You hear everything when you're wiretapping. I knew that a 15-year-old girl was pregnant 3 months before she told her parents. I knew that a grandmother was a cocaine addict and she kept it along with a bottle of vodka in the garden shed.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
everybody was just so pleased she would do the tomatoes every day. Well, of course she did the tomatoes every day.
Mhm.
She's doing drugs
Cheers.
and getting
In the
drunk.
garden shed. Yeah.
I listened to a young boy who came home from high school early to find his mother in bed with a neighbor. And he phoned his father.
Okay.
So, and I listened to everything. I mean, but here's my point in this. They know that. They did that to her, knowing that they would have to give her a notice that they had done that. Can you imagine how devastating it is to receive a notice that your whole family has been wiretapped?
Hmm. Yes.
For no reason. They did it under the emergencies provisions of the criminal code that are put in there for
Terrorism.
abduction, hostage, terrorism. They
Yeah.
used that section against her.
Oh.
Yeah. So that just tells you about their intent, about what they're doing, and about why she was charged. And the other thing is, no other police officer in Canada would dare now launch a criminal investigation into pharmaceuticals and the poisonous and the frauds and the bodies. Nobody will do it. We have effective political control of police operations in Canada. We might as well be in Cambodia or India.
Wow. And we can see it play out not just in this particular case, but we're watching it play out in the tariff situation we're dealing with now, because Americans are saying that we have one heck of a fentanyl and money laundering problem in Canada that, for whatever reason, cannot seem to be investigated by the RCMP. They just don't have the tools. They don't have this. They don't have that. Uh, Again, is this speaking to political corruption? Is someone benefiting by not investigating these horrendous crimes against Canadians and Americans?
Well, let's talk about the last corrupt commissioner of the RCMP we had, Brenda Lucki.
Oh boy.
Again, another disgusting bit of corruption. We had Canada's worst mass shooting down in Nova Scotia,
I remember.
where
Yeah.
the perpetrator, dressed as an RCMP officer, had his car dressed up, had a used RCMP car, and just went on a rampage shooting people.
Yes.
Okay? So very fresh in that investigation, very soon. Commissioner Lucky phoned the homicide team, and somebody had the presence of mind to record it. Thank you
Yep.
to that
Yep.
officer.
Mhm.
And demanded that they release to the press the types of weapons that were used, so the liberals' anti-gun policy, political policy would be forwarded. It could ride on that right now.
Yeah.
Now, when you're in the middle of a homicide investigation, especially early stages, you don't know where the guns came from. They come from that Indian reservation. Were they purchased legally? Were they bought behind some bar? Were they part of a break-in? Well, apparently all of those things. But you don't reveal that because the people who gave the guns are going to know. They're going to know and they will hide evidence. So
Yes.
it is a very destructive, unprofessional thing to do. And a corrupt Commissioner Brenda Lucky ordered the police to do that, and she was angry when they didn't, and they held their ground. That's just one incident, but if she would do that just like that, it's like she didn't even know it was wrong. It was do it so the liberal government can further their political agenda. She
Amazing.
didn't even right. So I think back to that picture I saw, a video I saw of Commissioner Lucky and Justin Trudeau exchanging hugs and kisses. Okay.
Yes. Yes, I remember
With
that.
her in uniform. Yeah, you remember that? Well, there's
Yes.
one that just came out yesterday that I saw, which has the current commissioner of the RCMP, big hugs and arms around each other, smiling, mugging for the camera
Yeah.
with
No.
Prime Minister Carney.
Yes, I've seen that.
You see
Uh,
that one?
yeah. I
What a
think
disgusting thing to do.
when we're talking about the Nova Scotia mass murder, I think the man who stood his ground was RCMP Superintendent Campbell, I believe was his name. Now, my question to you is, are there more Campbells out there? How does this get addressed? Who's going to take this forward and say, hey, we got a real problem here with corruption in our now our laws are telling police that they have to follow these corrupt processes to ensure that certain things don't get investigated. Who's out there to fix this? Where's the check and balance? How do you see this resolving itself?
I forget the numbers, but I think we have something like 71,000 sworn police officers in Canada. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is.
Mhm.
Only one had the courage and the integrity to do what Detective Bruce did.
Oh boy.
Even though all that evidence is there. I saw on that paper you put forward Sergeant Arbuthnot. Well, let me tell you about Sergeant Arbuthnot of the Ottawa Police. He was one of the professional standards investigators. And first of all, back in March of 2022, when the whole thing hit the papers, what happened? It was two rogue police officers, comrades of undoubtedly of Detective Bruce's, who went illegally, secretly, and criminally to the CBC reporter Shamini Yogaratnam, gave them
Yes.
the whole story, all the inside information. Well, Detective Bruce demanded that the Ottawa police investigate who that was. Now, they could have seized phones like they seized Detective Bruce's phone.
Yes.
They could have done charts on their mobile phone. They could have done all sorts of things. But Sergeant Arbuthnot and the Professional Standards Unit, including a man called Hugh O'Toole, who was inspector at the time, refused to do that criminal investigation.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And Detective Bruce was told that she was charged because of the embarrassment to the service because of the CBC article. Now, if you could make all that, fit in your mind, you're a better
Yeah.
man than I am.
It seems like it's pretty coordinated. It seems like a coordinated attack on Bruce by outing
That's it.
her to the public. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And Inspector Hugh O'Toole later on in January of 2024, sent a criminally threatening email to Detective Bruce, telling her that if she used in her defense, testified certain things, and used certain documents, she would be investigated and the implication was charged. Well, you know,
Mm.
we've got some sections in the criminal code about interfering with witnesses,
Yes.
about 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 telling them to not include certain evidence or not. Is very specific. He broke the criminal code. Now, Detective
Very serious.
Bruce's legal team stood up in court or in the tribunal. They said, we're marching out. We are going to file a criminal complaint, and they did. Nothing came of it, of course. But a few weeks later, Inspector Hugh O'Toole was told to resign. That's my inside information, and it's good.
Oh,
He was
okay.
told to resign, and he's now working as a lawyer. I thought that was rather ironic.
Okay, that is very ironic. Now we have a situation here where it looks like there are certain narratives, there are certain agencies, institutions that need to be protected at all costs, and the protection, if it has to come at the cost of no justice for 9 infant deaths, then so be it. There's another recent case here. I don't know if you've heard about the case of Sean Hartman. He was a 17-year-old young lad who got vaccinated because he had to if he wanted to play hockey. He was a big hockey fan. And he died a couple of days after his vaccination, and his father took Pfizer to task over this whole situation, saying there was no informed consent. They knew it was a bad product. They didn't say anything. And the judge in that case, unbelievably, wouldn't allow it to go forward to trial because the judge said that the government of Canada, I guess by extension Pfizer, whatever, but the government of Canada has no duty of care. No duty of care in the death of a young 17-year-old boy who just wanted to play hockey. Again, it seems like another sacrificial lamb that's being offered up, and I can't help but think of 3,500 years ago in a country called Canaan, they used to offer up their children to a fire god of some sort. And
Moloch.
I just can't break the comparison. Yes, Moloch, yeah. I just can't break the comparison. Here we are offering up children as sacrificial lambs. This is not my Canada. It's not my Canada, I'll tell you that.
It is now, Russ.
It is now. It is now.
How
I
do we
guess
take it back?
Yeah, how do we take it back? Perhaps we can start here with by discussing it when no one else will discuss it. Maybe this will help somehow. How can people help you with your endeavors, Donald? Is there anything our membership at C3RF can do to help out or keep track? Or
Well, I think there's a few major cases on the go right now, and we should all be aware of them. One is Detective Helen Bruce,
yes,
actually vital. She's going to have to appeal. We can't let this stand. She's going to have to appeal. They're trying to destroy her. She
yes,
was due for promotion 3 years ago. Well, that's gone. She's had to spend over $400,000, is my understanding, in legal fees. The union, her police union, didn't pay
no
legal
support,
fees. Yeah,
no
now
support.
listen to this. First of all, the union backed mandates, the vaccine mandates, never mind bodily autonomy. You'll get them or you'll be out of a job, out of a mortgage, will destroy
Yeah,
your life. The union, their own union backed that. So there's a liability there, issue there, and they don't want her to succeed. They
mm,
absolutely don't want her to succeed. That's my opinion based on what I'm seeing. Okay. But the
yeah.
other thing is they won't pay her legal fees for an on-duty investigation, but they paid the legal fees for an on-duty rapist. They paid the legal fees for coppers who took bribes on duty from tow truck companies.
Yes,
Okay.
I remember. Mhm.
So the whole thing is just unbelievably corrupt. And I don't know what we're going to do. It seems like every institution in this country has been corrupted to the point where no individual is willing to stand up. Look at all the doctors who lost their licenses for
Yes,
daring to suggest what we now know is true.
I've talked to some of them. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so send money to help Detective Bruce. Dan Hartman's case for his son Sean, very important too. No duty of care. That's going to have to be appealed.
Yeah.
These things take millions and millions of dollars.
Well,
But the other thing I want, the third thing I want is this. There are a lot of people today, former police officers, former crowns, lawyers, and even some police officers who are still on duty but have to be careful. People are collecting evidence, real evidence, and there's a lot of it out there to show what people knew, when they knew it, and what they did. I have said that many people in this country are guilty of criminal negligence causing death with the mandating of the mRNA vaccines that they knew, not should have known, absolutely knew were death. And they lied to the public and mandated it. And in so doing, some of them made lots of money. And they're afraid now, and they should be. They should be afraid. They're frightened to death, and they're going to do anything they can, including destroying the only police officer in Canada that had the integrity and courage at the time
yeah.
to investigate this. So we need the evidence.
Evidence and money. It looks like
Evidence and
two
money.
things that are in high demand here, Donald. And thanks for putting that forward. I know our C3RF membership will take great interest in that. And it's been wonderful talking to you again. I'm glad to hear that everyone's fine in Thailand there after that big quake. Boy, that was something else, watching the video on that stuff. But again, thanks so much for joining us today with this very, very important discussion. Thanks, Donald.
Thanks for the opportunity, Russ.
Okay, until next time.
Bye-bye.